Let's go back in time, not to a sci-fi future, but to a real night in 1964. The setting is a normal street in Queens, New York. A woman named Kitty Genovese is attacked, and her screams for help cut through the darkness. The chilling part of this story, the part that sent a shockwave through the country, wasn't just the crime itself, it was the silence that followed. Reportedly, dozens of her neighbors heard her cries from the safety of their apartments, but for a long, agonizing half hour, no one came to help. It was as if a spell of indifference had fallen over the entire block, a terrifying glimpse into a society that might be losing its most basic human connection. Now, take that unsettling quiet from a single city street. Imagine that silence stretching, expanding across neighborhoods, across countries, across entire continents. Imagine that single, chilling moment of inaction being played out not just once, but millions of times a day, every single day, in ways we don't even see. This is the very territory a philosopher named Peter Singer forced us to look at in 1971. He wasn't just debating theory in a classroom, he was looking at the real-world horror of people dying in East Bengal from a lack of food and basic medicine. But what if this isn't just a grim piece of history? What if these vast tragedies, then and now, aren't like hurricanes or earthquakes, unstoppable forces of nature we are helpless to prevent? What if, as Singer argued, they are the direct result of human choices? And what if the most profound choice is the one we make when we do nothing at all? Today, when nearly 1 in every 11 people on this planet still faces hunger, what if our ordinary, comfortable lives unknowingly make us complicit? What if that echo from that New York street never really faded, and the true moral test of our time is how we respond to the cries we can't physically hear but know are there? Let's try a little thought experiment. Picture a scene. You're walking through a park, feeling good about those new expensive shoes you just bought. Suddenly, you see it. A small child has slipped into an ornamental pond and is struggling, thrashing in the water. There's no one else. You look at your perfect new shoes, then at the murky water, and you know they'll be completely ruined. What do? The question is almost insulting, isn't it? Of course you jump in. A human life versus a pair of shoes isn't a real choice. But let's just change the coordinates. What if that drowning child isn't in a pond right in front of you, but is a notification on your screen? A face in a charity ad you scroll past between a meme and a message from a friend. Saving them doesn't cost you ruined shoes, but the price of a few lattes donated to an effective cause. Suddenly, the moral clarity gets fuzzy. The logic feels different. We don't feel like monsters for continuing to scroll. Our emotional programming seems to have a kind of proximity sensor, where empathy fades with distance. And this is where we run into a devastatingly simple piece of philosophy, the kind of common sense that can dismantle your whole worldview. The argument, put forward by thinkers like Peter Singer, is that if we can prevent something genuinely awful from happening without giving up anything of comparable moral importance, then we are ethically obligated to do it. The truly radical part of this idea is that geography is morally irrelevant. The child dying a world away is, ethically speaking, no different from the child in the pond. It's a bit like choosing the red pill in the Matrix. Once you see the brutal logic of the code, you can't unsee it. The child in the pond is our red pill moment, an unavoidable reality we are forced to act on. But the child on our screen? We've become masters at taking the blue pill, choosing the comfort of our daily lives over the harsh reality that our insignificant sacrifice could be the one thing that saves a life. The most unsettling part of this isn't that we might fail a hypothetical test. It's the slow creeping realization that we are standing at the edge of that pond every single day. The only difference is, we've gotten very, very good at looking away. Think about that dopamine hit when the new phone arrives, or the way that new jacket feels the first time you wear it out. We've all been trained to see these moments as small, deserved trophies in the game of modern life. They're the little perks that make the hard work feel worth it. But what if that's not the whole story? What if every time we tap our card for a want instead of a need, there's a quiet moral calculation happening in the background, a kind of shadow ledger we've all agreed not to look at too closely? This is the uncomfortable territory this way of thinking pushes us into. It argues that we've been taught to frame generosity as a bonus feature, an act that's nice if you do it, something worthy of a pat on the back. But this philosophy completely flips the script. It's almost like a scene from a quiet, philosophical superhero movie. We're all walking around with a low-key superpower, the ability to save a life. That money we spend on a luxury isn't just a neutral object, it's a choice. And in choosing that upgrade, or that expensive meal, you are actively choosing not to deploy your power. The same stack of bills that bought a new television for a living room in one country could have been the simple medicine that kept a child from dying of a preventable illness in another. And this is where the logic takes its most shocking turn. It suggests that the moral line we've drawn between our comfortable inaction and a more blatant failure to help, the kind we'd actually condemn someone for, is basically written in sand. The failure to act, when you had the means to do so, ends in the same result. The logic is brutal. It argues our empathy has become geo-fenced. The thought of a child we know suffering from something easily treatable is a nightmare we'd move heaven and earth to prevent. If we believe in any real version of doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, then that protective instinct shouldn't just stop at our own zip code. Suddenly giving when you have more than enough isn't a feel-good act of charity. It starts to look more like a fundamental requirement of justice. The real moral question isn't about the good we do when we give, but about the wrong we might be doing when we don't. Think about how we react when a disaster strikes. When a hurricane or a wildfire hits close to home, within our own borders, there's an immediate, massive outpouring of support. People donate, volunteer, and share stories of heroism. It's a powerful, unifying moment. But then you see the news of an equally devastating famine or flood on another continent, and the reaction is quieter, more muted. And you have to start wondering, is this difference in our response because our help is genuinely more effective at home? Or is it that we're still running on an outdated moral software? A kind of tribal instinct, where our circle of care is drawn neatly around the people who look and sound like us. Our technology has completely demolished that old map. Think of the way an astronaut sees the Earth from space, not as a patchwork of rival nations, but as a single, fragile blue marble. That's the perspective our technology now gives us every single day. Think of the smartphone in your pocket. With a few taps, you can send aid to a village thousands of miles away, an act that would have been impossible for the most powerful kings just a few centuries ago. The child starving in a distant land is, in a very real and practical sense, now our neighbor. The great glitch in the modern world is this: our ability to help is global, but our gut-level moral instincts are still fiercely local. Our empathy is trying to catch up to the reality our own inventions have created, and this forces us to confront an even more uncomfortable line we've drawn. Consider the person who adores their dog, treats it like a member of the family, and would be horrified at the thought of its suffering. That same person might not think twice about the conditions of the animals that produce their dinner. This creates what you could call a speciesist blind spot. But as some philosophers have argued, if we're going to be consistent, the core question isn't whether a being can talk or solve a puzzle, but simply whether it can suffer. Once you accept that, the suffering of an animal in a factory farm has to be entered onto the same moral ledger as any other. It leaves us with a profound and deeply unsettling question. If the old boundaries of nation, tribe, and even species don't really hold up to scrutiny, where exactly does our circle of concern truly end? Let's talk about the story you tell yourself about your life. You know the one. It's a pretty good story, right? The one where you work hard, you put in the hours, you earn your comforts. That new phone, that weekend trip, that slightly too expensive jacket. It's all the payoff, the reward for your labor. It's your narrative. But someone out there might be thinking, okay, touché. Yeah, I buy things to make my life better, but what I buy doesn't define my entire moral character. My values are deeper than that, right? Yes, they probably are, but let me ask you a question about that. Let's run a little thought experiment, a scene pulled from some high-stakes thriller, dreamt up by the philosopher Peter Singer. Imagine a man named Bob. Bob has spent his entire life, his life savings, on his one true love: a pristine, priceless Bugatti. One afternoon, he parks it near a railway siding. As he's admiring it, he sees a runaway train hurtling down the tracks towards a child who has wandered on. Bob is standing right next to a switch. He has one choice, and he has to make it in a second. He can flip the switch, divert the train, and save the child. But the diverted train will plow directly into his Bugatti, destroying it completely. We all know the answer, don't we? It's not even a choice. Only a monster saves the car. But here's the twist. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. What if that Bugatti isn't just a car? What if that Bugatti is the money you're setting aside for a slightly cushier retirement? What if it's the bonus you just spent on home renovations? And what if the child on the tracks is just further away? What if their face is just a pixelated image on a charity website instead of a real person standing right in front of you? Who decided that physical distance somehow changes the moral calculation? By choosing our own comforts, our own luxuries, aren't we all, in our own quiet way, choosing to protect our own priceless things? This is where the logic gets relentless. It suggests that failing to save a life that you could have saved, at no comparable cost to your own well-being, isn't just a passive oversight. It's an active moral choice, basically on par with flipping the switch the wrong way. And if that sounds extreme, if that feels unfair, consider the people who have truly internalized this. There are real accounts of individuals who have done things like donate a kidney to a complete stranger. Their reasoning is terrifyingly simple. I have two, I only need one to live a perfectly healthy life. This other person needs one to live at all. My extra kidney is a life-saving gift I'm just holding on to. And in that moment, the comfortable narrative we've built for ourselves completely shatters. The question is no longer about what we do in some dramatic one-off life or death moment. It's about the 1,000 tiny, silent choices we make every single day when we're pretty sure no one else is watching. Take a walk through the average grocery store. We make hundreds of small decisions based on price, branding, what we're hungry for, maybe some vague idea of what's healthy. We see a package of chicken or a carton of milk, and our brain registers it as a product, an ingredient, a simple piece of a puzzle for tonight's dinner. But you have to wonder, is that steak in your cart just a piece of food? A straightforward transaction between you and the supermarket? Or is it a quiet financial vote for a vast system you've just decided not to think about? It's like we've been sold a kind of convenient blindness, a story that lets us treat the capacity for pain as irrelevant, as long as it exists on the other side of a species line. Think of the person who would slam on their brakes to avoid hitting a dog, but then goes home to eat a meal that required an animal to live a life of total confinement and agony. Think of the beauty products sitting on the shelf, where immense suffering was inflicted in a lab for the marginal benefit of a new shade of lipstick. In this light, these aren't just unfortunate parts of life, they're profound ethical failures. It's a world where our moral circle isn't drawn with permanent ink, but with chalk on the pavement, easily erased and redrawn whenever it becomes inconvenient. The issue isn't that we are monsters, it's that we have a highly selective, self-serving definition of what a monster even is. And how about the person who sees themselves as fundamentally good? The person who is kind to their family, who volunteers their time, donates to causes for people halfway around the world, and feels totally secure in their moral standing. There's a point where you have to ask, is this person truly living an ethical life, or are they just living an ethical life within the very narrow confines of what is socially expected? It's as if their moral compass is a powerful spotlight they've chosen to shine only on human affairs, leaving entire continents of suffering in total darkness. The energy is there, the capacity for empathy is there, but it's not being applied across the board. Failing to expand that circle of concern, to account for the pain we casually cause any being that can feel it, renders our entire ethical self-image dangerously incomplete. It's like watching a movie and finding out in the final act that the hero you were rooting for was, unknowingly, the one powering the villain's doomsday machine the whole time.